Okay. How is that? Can y'all, is that better? Is your, Jazz, you there?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me? I'm
Okay.
frozen.
Yeah, but my background is not loading.
Mine's either. I had to,
I'm stuck.
mine, mine's either.
Okay, let me see if I'll do it one more time. Um,
There. So
yeah,
you may have
there's
to
a
turn your camera off, then turn it on.
okay.
Yeah. Turn it on and okay. So do you hear me? Okay, good. Good thing. I'm glad. Yeah, TikTok is glitching. It's been acting crazy. It's been acting crazy. But does it work, Jazz? There you go.
Yes.
Yeah, that's what I had to do.
Can y'all see me now?
Yes.
Okay. Cool.
Ryan.
Everybody, be sure to tap the screen, do your checklist, which is send out your daily heart me, tap the live, share the live, repost, and also share via your story. Then once we
Hello.
get everybody up here, we'll get started.
I am trying to figure
Hello.
out um I'm using the desktop, and I'm trying to figure
Oh.
out how to join you through that, not using the link you messaged me.
Okay, so with
Okay.
computers, you won't be able to use your camera. You have to have like a your phone or your tablet. Yeah, which really sucks. I tried to I try to use my laptop computer and it won't work. So
Huh.
yeah.
Okay. Well, let's see what we can do here.
hmm
Uh,
Because you would think with computers nowadays or laptops has cameras on it, you know.
yeah.
But while Jazz, you need to be above me.
No, you're fine where you are.
All right. There we
Okay.
go.
It's fine.
Hey, Ryan.
Hello.
How are you?
Doing well. How are y'all?
Good.
Good. How are you?
Can't complain. Glad to be here
Okay.
today.
All right. Let us know and we'll get started whenever you're ready.
Good to go.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Welcome to our Vote Counts Town Hall. I am your moderator, Jazz B, and I also have Sianca, who is also our moderator for tonight. Hello, Sianca.
Hey.
Hi. So, for those who are not familiar with our vote counts, we're also known as OVC. We are a nonpartisan movement uniting Americans from all walks of life to empower voters, support candidates of integrity, and ensure every voice is heard. Through education, outreach, accountability, and action, we're building a stronger democracy. So, with one informed vote at a time, join us because your vote is your power. So, tonight we're joined by Fred Ryan Lawson. Um, Fred is also, I'm sorry, Ryan. You go by Ryan, correct? Okay. Ryan is a candidate running for Arizona State Senate Legislative District 19, which comprises of areas such as Greenlee County and parts of Cochise, Graham, Pima, and Santa Cruz counties. We'll be talking about his background, his vision for the district, and of course, taking your questions live. So, Ryan, for those, just to give you the format of the town hall, after each set of topic questions, we will allow one person to come up and ask you a question. After that, we'll move forward to the next topic and rinse and repeat
Okay.
type of style. Okay?
Sounds
All
good.
right. So, Mr. Lawson, we've learned that you are an Army veteran, a software developer, and a small business owner. So that's just to highlight a few things. But for
Mhm.
those who are meeting you for the first time, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and why you're running to be a state senator?
Well, a little bit about myself is I just have a history of leadership in basically every endeavor that I've taken into. I was a staff sergeant in the Army, and I deployed to Iraq a couple of times as an NCO. That's a non-commissioned officer or a sergeant. And so you get used to taking leadership on things when you see that something needs done, instead of just shouting for someone to come fix it. You get in the habit of going, well, I guess I got to. And that's kind of what was happening out here is, we've been kind of a neglected area for a long time, from the national party. We're rural southeast Arizona, and so there's not a lot of, they feel there's not a lot of payoff in putting any kind of effort into down here, and so the state of things is really degraded. But like, we've got to flip this state. We've got to flip the state house in order to get anything done. And maybe that doesn't happen this time. Maybe we have to have a couple of years in the wilderness, building up our strength, building up our movement, building up a grassroots, community oriented kind of thing. And that's part of it. And I understand that this is not a Hail Mary. This isn't torpedoing the Death Star. It's not going to be something that is tied up neatly after a 30-minute episode. So, understanding the long haul, understanding the needs of organizing a movement and going forward, is something that I have, because I have endeavored into many long haul projects, and I know how to organize myself and others in order to get things done.
Thank you for that. And so I want to roll into asking you an icebreaker question before we get down to the tough questions.
Go ahead.
So let me know, what is more stressful for you? Is it Arizona traffic, debugging code, or campaigning funding calls?
Well, where I'm at, there's not a lot of traffic that's too bad. Now, like, you start getting into Tucson and Phoenix, and yeah, it gets pretty hairy. But I'm pretty rural out where I'm at. We're spread out real thin, so the traffic's not so bad. So debugging code can be stressful, especially if it's somebody else's code or it's something that you haven't been to in many years looking at, and you're kind of having that Gandalf moment where you're like, well, it's been a long time, but the air doesn't stink so bad down that way. So, and I haven't really gotten into a lot of campaign funding calls so far. I'm just trying to get out to all the places, meet all of the different Democratic organizations out here in the district, and we're a good fifth of the state's mass. So we're huge, and it's quite an endeavor to go out and meet everybody and get FaceTime with all the different movers and shakers. Not to say that there's a ton of energy out here just yet. We've very much been kind of in a bit of disarray over the last several years, and I'm just now coming to the party and seeing the state that it's in, and so that's a little stressful. Realizing that this is a big job, and it's not a just me job. This is everybody. This is the entire working class out here is needed to at least be aware of what we're trying to do for them.
Okay. Thank you for that. And for someone like me, I'm in software development as well. So when you said debugging code, especially when you have to take on something that someone else built and have to figure out how they built it, I totally can relate to that. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and roll it over into our first topic. So I will hand it over to Sianca to give you the questions about economic development. Sianca?
Thank you, Jasmine. To Mr. Ryan. Well, to Ryan, yes, to Mr. Ryan Hoare. I'm also a disabled veteran, was in the Army as well, 92 Alpha. So economic development. So as someone with both military and small business experience, you've spoken about redirecting prosperity back into local communities, letting outside corporations extract it. What specific policies or reforms would you champion in the Arizona Senate to strengthen small businesses, encourage entrepreneurship, and keep economic growth local in District 19?
So I think for the first and foremost, we have to realize that a lot of the the reason that the local business is lagging so far behind is that there is a lot of corruption and conflict of interest up and down the entire chain. And so, first and foremost, we have to make a more honest government. We have to make a more honest legislature. And one of my big things that I'm going to be pushing for is what I call the Arizona Accountability Act. And the way that's going to work is that it is going to create fiduciary bonds for legislators and political appointees, which we already have in Arizona for sheriffs. And what that a fiduciary bond is basically it's posted like any other bond, and it pays out if someone breaks their duty as a fiduciary, which is somebody who is legally required to act in the utmost of care and candor and truth to the beneficiary of that. So we make the people of Arizona the beneficiaries of that fiduciary bond, and if somebody then betrays that trust and is found to have been in violation of that fiduciary duty, they have to the bond pays to the state, and then the bond company sues the person that broke that faith. And so that then puts a real actual consequence on our leaders to fulfill their duties for the best interest of the state. And often the best interest of the state and the people in it is not monopolizing everything to a few, mega billionaires and taking all of the resources and the wealth and the value out of the communities and shipping it to Wall Street or whatever. So that's the first and foremost kind of thing. And then that has follow-on effects as, now when it comes time for who gets, different kind of contracts, who gets special deals, or if they get special deals, tax breaks for coming in and setting up, a business in the state. Well, if that's not in our best interest, and that person has received a ton of money from that person who's seeking that contract or seeking to start that business or facility or whatever, then they're in danger of falling foul of that fiduciary bond. And in order to kind of offset that, we can expand the Clean Elections Commission, call it the Clean Government Commission, and add a committee of lawyers that are appointed by the Dean of Legal Studies at the university, the Supreme Court, and the Bar Association, in order for there to be like some real, weight of legal knowledge behind this, and have this committee be one that people under that fiduciary bond can reach out to and ask, hey, this is the situation. If I do this, is that going to be in violation? And if they do that and they abide by the ruling of the committee, then they're indemnified in that decision. But if they don't, or they violate that, then they put themselves at risk for that litigation. And I think that that's something that having them be that watchdog and someone like kind of act as an ombudsman for our government in those kind of situations, I think will do a much better job than currently the way that the legislature kind of polices itself or, does nominally.
Wow. That's a plan. That's a plan. I will have a backup question after I ask this. We're going to give that a rest. I'm going to ask you this question. So Arizona's economy is expanding rapidly, but many residents feel left behind as housing, wages, and job opportunities fail to keep pace. So how do you plan to balance economic development with affordability, like ensuring that new investments, infrastructure, and technology growth actually benefit working families rather than driving up cost of living?
Absolutely. And that is kind of the same kind of calculation that has to be done under that Accountability Act, where if these things are coming in and they're going to take up all the water, or they're going to drive up electricity costs because they have such a extreme strain on the grid, or if they're going to be a very, pollution generating kind of facility, those are things that are going to be then controlled by that Accountability Act and by that committee that's looking in on, is this really for the best of the people? And can you prove that, to a standard that you're going to pass, you're going to pass legal muster in a lawsuit for, if you violate this and you cause that kind of harm to the people of Arizona. And I think that, by making the people of Arizona the beneficiaries of that fiduciary duty, then they do have to consider what is best for the working people, for the living natural human beings in Arizona, instead of saying that by some abstraction of an abstraction of an abstraction, that this corporation getting rich off of our land, our water, and our lives is somehow good for us.
That's awesome. We're going to ask one person from the audience to ask the candidate a question. I have one where we was talking about the fiduciary accountability, Arizona accountability. So would you also say, like, as far as a person wants to start a business, will you attack like the redlining, like the difficulty of starting a business? Because I have experience. I'm in North Carolina. I have experienced like the loopholes and the you got to jump over here, you got to do this here, you got to do that there. So what can you do to like streamline it where people will not have a hard time of starting their business?
So that's, unfortunately, we have so much of our economy and the way everything works tied up in for-profit ventures. And it is very difficult in Arizona to necessarily change that in the current situation. And that's something that we can push to change, but if we really want to make things happen, we have to take a multi-pronged approach. So like what I'm doing in my area, I've started a nonprofit I'm calling FLAIR, and it is the Frontier Leadership Academy of Rural Enterprise. And basically what that does is it's there to train people to start worker-owned cooperatives, and how to be peer leaders and community-minded businesses with sustainability, at the forefront of operations. And so once we get it going, we're going to be we'll have mentors assigned to these cooperatives that get started up, and then the organization will have an equity stake in that business that will then pay to snowball into starting up other businesses like this. And so by taking multiple approaches, and where legislatively it's a dead end because there's just not the political capital to get that done, we then focus on doing it through private efforts that we can use. I can use my bully pulpit of being a state senator to then promote and advance, and get that so much into the public conscious that like it becomes a salient point where people can actually discuss doing this as the state, using state resources. But we have to shift the culture more towards it being okay for the state to give a damn about us.
That's what's up. And I hope, I wish you the best on that, and I hope that FLAIR do come to fruition in helping people. Is there anybody? We don't have anybody in the chat or in the queue. We're gonna go right along with healthcare and women's health to Jasby. Jasby, take it away.
Okay. All right. So, Mr. Slawson, we're going to talk about healthcare. As I've learned about Arizona, we've learned that there are several factors that you all are having challenges on, such as the shortage of healthcare physicians, and and sometimes in certain rural areas there is a lack of access to healthcare. But I want to know, what is your plan to improve healthcare access for veterans in rural regions such as Yuma, Kingman, Page, and Winslow, where clinics are limited?
Well, I mean, for veterans particularly, that's A lot of that is going to be coming in through the VA, and then the VA has a program where if they don't have adequate facilities, they then fund the local options for VA recipients. But then there's some people who don't fall under VA healthcare, and we have to. Unfortunately, most of the Medicare money, Medicaid money comes from the federal government, and they're being really, really tight-fisted and diverting a lot of the funds that are supposed to go to the people into their own little side projects and into their own pockets. So we're really going to have to look at how does Arizona take care of its own and align its budgets to the needs of its people without being able to rely on the federal government to do its duties to the state and to the people in the way that they have traditionally. So it's a big job. It is a huge job because you're talking about billions and billions of dollars, and now that rug's been pulled out from under us, or it looks to be like it's going to, that's going to happen, and we just have no ability to have faith in the federal government fulfilling their promises to the veterans in the ways that they should. So, ideally, we would pass an expansion of Medicaid and focus on ways of getting either community-owned clinics or state-run clinics out there in places where the market has failed to provide those services. But right now we're facing a situation where budgets are short and we're being abandoned by the federal government.
Okay, and I just want to follow up with you on that. Just as a funding net benefit, do you think having people in the state Senate chamber support expanding mobile clinics and telehealth infrastructure that can help with the access to healthcare in rural areas?
I mean, the data shows that is actually a very effective way of getting healthcare out to these underserved populations, and that is more than likely the most readily available and economically sound way of doing that. So, absolutely.
Okay. All right. So those were the questions I have for you regarding healthcare. So I will allow one person to come up and ask you a question regarding healthcare or any other topic we just discussed if they want to have you expound more about it. But in the meantime, I do have a question for you on this topic regarding healthcare. We also know that when it comes to Roe v. Wade, this has almost been 2 years since it started. And there was a trigger law that happened in the state of Arizona.
Mm-hmm.
And then from what I understand, there was a ballot initiative that was that came up, was it last year, where essentially the people of Arizona voted to protect women's right to choose. If, correct me if I'm wrong. What are your thoughts on that? Do you think other states should follow suit on that to have it where it's all 50 states and not just in selective states where people had to just make a decision to make it a ballot initiative in order for voters to make that decision to choose?
I think it is in the people's interest, and it is their right to secure bodily autonomy and getting, political grifters out of their doctor's offices and out of their OBGYN and out of their wombs by any means necessary. And, ideally that would be a constitutional amendment to protect the bodily autonomy of every human being in America. But I'm seeking to be a state senator, so my ability to influence that beyond just being a talking head is very limited. But I do think that every opportunity that we get to strengthen the bodily autonomy and the medical privacy of people in Arizona, we should absolutely press forward on that.
Okay. All right. So those are the questions I have for you, and I'll go ahead and roll it over to Sianca to ask about education.
All right. Sick, I'm going to put a pin on that. So hold that question after this here. Okay. About public education. Thanks, Jazz. So, Mr. Ryan, Arizona's public schools continue to face teacher shortages, even here in North Carolina as well, but that's another story. Underfunded classrooms and outdated resources. What steps would you take to ensure stable funding for public education and to attract and retain qualified teachers, especially in communities that have been historically underserved?
I think that we need to look at what kind of wages we're paying these teachers. You know, we're paying them McDonald's wages and expecting master's degree level work out of them, and that is insane, absurd, and offensive. It's in fact an affront to having a civilized society when you refuse to invest in the children and the people who make sure that the children become citizens and members of that society that are actually promoting the values and supporting the work of that society. So we need to bring those teachers' salaries in line with, you know, what does the state pay workers who are in positions that require a master's degree? That's more closely what we should be paying our teachers. And I think we should divorce this funding of schools from property taxes in the counties, because that just means that poor places get poor teachers and poor outcomes and poor children and poverty that is just impossible to get rid of because there's no education there to enlighten people on how to get out of that circumstance. So I think that we should definitely have, you know, a relook at how schools are funded and how teachers are paid. We're 50th. We are dead last in this United States of America for educational outcomes, and that is absurd and disgusting and shameful.
Thank you for that answer. Another question. Parents and educators across Arizona are calling for more transparency, safety, and community involvement in our schools. How would you work with local school boards and educators to strengthen public education, improve student outcomes, and make sure every child, regardless of zip code, has access to a high quality education?
I mean, that really harkens back to making the funding of schools no longer reliant on those property taxes. It really is. When schools have funding, you attract teachers that are capable of, you know, managing these student loads, and you expand the schools. You have fewer students per teacher. You have more resources to do more with, and when there's something to be proud of, the parents will get more involved. And when the school boards actually are interested in getting the parents involved and educating the parents on how they're doing their job and how well they're doing their job and what they need to do it better, then you start to actually have a conversation between the school boards and the parents that gets something done, rather than there's kind of an adversarial thing, because there are organizations and ideologues who are trying to take over these schools and take over these school boards in order to push a Christian nationalist agenda and, you know, recreate a false America and a false, you know, culture into these schools that serves their own ideology.
Okay, that's awesome. That's a great response. We do have one question in the comment by Ms. Yoli. What's your stance on the ESA/voucher program for schools?
So I think that the ESA vouchers are good for kids who are disabled or have other kinds of needs that aren't able to be met by the traditional, you know, in-person public schools. But I don't think that they should necessarily be used for every charter school that has an ideological bent to it to try and indoctrinate people into an anti-American and antisocial sort of ideology, like I was talking about before, where you have these, you know, these Christian nationalists and even white nationalist charter schools that are starting up and are poorly serving the community because they pick which students they want. They can throw out any student that doesn't perform up to their standards, and they can, you know, this is just this is the school segregation by other means, and I think that that's disgusting, and we shouldn't be allowing it. I think that in the our Constitution in Arizona, we have a clause that is the that is basically the freedom of conscience, and in there, I think that we should add a standard that if you're taking state money in any way whatsoever, or you're a recipient of state money through any means, that you should be performing the exact same service under the exact same conditions to the exact same persons that the state would be legally required to in order to be able to receive that money. And I think that that would clean up a lot of these, these right wing extremist academies, and that are starting up and soaking out a ton of money from our public schools, and having a very antisocial cohort of children that are being raised into adults here that are trying to destroy society faster than we can build it back up. So I think that that's a major thing to look at and to fix, and especially because there's they had a kind of a de minimis exemption on reporting what you're using this stuff for. So like all kinds of crazy stuff got voucher money spent on it when it had nothing to do with actually improving or providing education for kids. And that needs to absolutely stop. And those people that did that, we should have a clawback for that.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ryan, for actually putting that in the forefront that you see it. A lot of people who are not in your stance have been saying this, but to hear from a person of you to say it, it's very heartwarming for me personally. I'm quite sure for Jasby too, but for me personally, to hear you acknowledge that, that's amazing, and I really appreciate you doing that. Are there any other questions in the chat or anybody in the queue? If not, I'm going to send it right back to. I'm sorry. We're going to do some rapid fire questions. This is on the political side. Okay, Mr. Ryan, you ready?
Bring it on.
All right. So this is yes or no question. All right. So should Arizona strengthen penalties for public corruption? Yes or no?
Absolutely.
Should Arizona restrict foreign or out-of-state entities from buying water rights?
Yes.
Would you support incentives specifically for locally owned businesses?
Yes.
Do you support modernizing state immigration-related technology systems?
Sorry?
Do you support modernizing state immigration-related technology systems?
If we have such systems, I'm not fully aware of the depth of that. But because that's a federal thing, I don't know how much the state actually does immigration stuff. So that's not a question that I have enough knowledge about
Okay.
to give a great answer on.
That's fine. That's awesome. In one sentence, why should your district trust you with their votes?
Well, because I'm going to go under a fiduciary bond about it, and my opponent is not. My opponent has had decades in the legislature to correct for some of this corporate first legislation, and to correct for the overdraft of water by these big corporate farms that's wrecking rural Arizona. And they've instead chosen to side with organizations like ALEC, which is in bed with the Heritage Foundation, that basically just writes their legislation for them and then sends them on vacations. And so there's a lot of conflict of interest in the incumbent that I'm going to be running against, and they do not seem to be interested in any kind of accountability. They don't seem to be doing any kind of work in the community, and they don't seem to be interested in the working class and how their work actually affects the people of the state and of the district. And I care, and it impacts me personally. I am working class. I am not rich. I am not independently wealthy. I am going paycheck to paycheck just like everybody else. I just happen to have an opportunity to make a run for it, and I'm taking it.
Well, Jazz, I guess I gotta pack my bags and go to Arizona. I'm like, from all these town halls we've had, Mr. Ryan, there have been some great ideas, and I cannot clone myself enough to live in the beautiful 50 states of this country.
But with that being said, you mentioned an ALEC. Has entities like ALEC reached out to you, those special interest groups?
I'm probably not on their radar just yet. It's still really
Okay.
early. We haven't even had um, the campaign is not even technically open until the campaign season rather isn't really technically open until January, and so this early on, and me being a Democrat and me being a very pro working class, they're probably not going to contact me. But I'm gonna say it right here: if any outside groups, any industry groups, any kind of uh, these big lobbying groups contact me, I'm gonna bring it out publicly. I'm gonna put it on blast. So, if people ask about APAC, if APAC comes to talk to me, I'm gonna tell the world what they want me to do, and let the dice fall where they do. I'm not here to make money. I'm not here to get rich. I'm here to give my people a chance at finding prosperity and dignity and community that has been denied them.
Right.
Okay.
He said what he said. Thank you, Mr. Ryan, for answering those questions. I'm going to turn it over to public safety to Miss Jazz B. Take it away, Jazz.
Okay, so Mr. Slawson, we know that communities across Arizona have been concerned about rising crime rates. But particularly in your area, which is tend to be more rural, they don't really have that much of a concern. But since you will be serving in the state senate of Arizona, for you to work with other colleagues, how would you work to improve public safety while ensuring that police remains fair, community based, and focused on prevention rather than just surely punishment?
Well, that is a social level systemic issue, and that is something that I very much believe in. I do believe that we should have police who are accountable to the people, who are dedicated to being of service to the community first and foremost. And I think that we do that by investing in the people first and foremost. When you don't invest in your people, desperation and ignorance and all of the problems that come from that lead to higher crime rates, lead to more problems in society, lead to more violent interactions with law enforcement. And so, you add on to that, you have all of these, grifters and ideologues and whatnot who are actively trying to stoke civil problems and disunity and trying to encourage violence from vigilantes against their political targets. And so we really have to focus on community and rebuilding it and reinforcing it, because when you humanize one another and you force the police to view the people, as humans like them, and you build relationships between the communities and the people, you get those better outcomes. You end up with a lot more of an Andy Griffith sort of situation when the police know the people that they're dealing with, and they've built rapport, they've built trust, and they've served, and they've done good things that are helpful to the people. And one of the big things that I think we have to do in order to change that culture is we need to get corporations out of our legal system, out of our justice system. We need to get rid of for-profit prisons. We need to get rid of all of these usurers and scammers and loan sharks that are involved in our court system and in our bond system and all of the other the systems that they use to amortize fines and fees and stuff like that, they usually have a huge amount of interest that's paid to private companies that have no business being in any kind of you know, punitive or co-opting state violence for themselves. And I think that we need to really do a deep clean, getting all of those sorts of actors out of our justice system, and that turns the cops back into public servants instead of slave catchers, because that's really what you have when you have these contracts with for-profit prisons that require a certain number of beds be filled.
Thank you for that response. And so also I want to roll into another topic regarding public safety. So as people may not know that 1 in 5 self-unaliving ideations in Arizona tend to be veterans. I just want to know regarding public safety in particular when it comes to topics like emergency response and mental health and with the implementation of intervention. Can you tell me what strategies would you support to strengthen having more access to veterans regarding mental health, and then also adolescents as well? There was a survey in Arizona where they surveyed children who had those particular ideations in the past 12 months. It has been on the rise in the state of Arizona. Could you talk more about what could you in the state Senate there implement, or any type of resources regarding that?
So this one goes back to community as well. We have to rebuild the concept of ourselves as members of a community and rebuild the infrastructure of human community, and focus on ways to bring humans into contact with one another in a sustainable and manageable and beneficial way that allows for these people who are suffering to have a community, to have this village, this network that is there to help them along and support them and be a reason to stay. And because people are so atomized and so isolated and so kept so separate by just dint of the way that our infrastructure is put together, we have to change that. We have a very machine oriented infrastructure, a very it's all about cars and the access to the outside seems to be secondary for people, and we're only expected to occupy the space between our front door and our car door. And I think that is insane, and I think that it is incredibly harmful to us at a species level. We evolved to what we are as a social species, and we desperately need to live in a social environment and to be among others, and not just online, in person, in contact. And without that, we have all sorts of terrible things that start to eat away at our psyche. And so putting any kind of effort into investing in person-centric, human-centric infrastructure in communities is absolutely vital to taking these things on.
Thank you for that. We do have a question in the chat. Someone asked, how would you combat the substance trafficking crisis affecting Arizona communities?
So that's actually kind of part of my broader view on the migration issues that are down here at the border. So first and foremost, we should be using the opioid settlement funds, and we should be trying to get Medicaid expansions down here to build state-run, evidence-based, non-carceral drug rehabilitation centers. And we need to get for-profit entities out of that, because they're scamming. They're getting people hooked on drugs on purpose in order to get them enrolled so that they can get more money from the state. So we got to get rid of those. We need state-run facilities, and that will build a medical infrastructure that will it will actually get people off of these drugs, and it will destroy the market on this side of the border for those drugs to come in. And so by destroying the market, by destroying the demand, is how you deal with people doing things for money that you don't want them doing. But like when we have another thing that happens here is we have workers who are trafficked in by these large corporations, by these large farms, by these, very wealthy entities, and we need to start holding those accountable as well, because migration is a human thing. That is something our species does. We go for greener pastures, and I can't control the federal level of what they say about who gets to come in and who doesn't. But what we can do is we can get rid of the organized criminal syndicates by getting rid of the demand. So these businesses that rely on trafficked labor that is being exploited and mistreated, we need to really hold them accountable. We need to go after the reasons that they are bringing in people undocumented and cheating on the what is the equal, or no, it's not equal, the citizen verification system. So they're basically giving them fake credentials, giving them fake social security numbers, and then when the authorities will show up, they're like, oh, I didn't know that this wasn't John Smith from North Dakota. And it's like, come on, y'all. So we need to hold those people accountable, and then we need to have those rehab centers to actually counteract that fentanyl crisis in order to get people well and get them off of these products coming up. So once there's no demand or less demand, we're going to see less of the issues of violence and other kinds of trafficking, because any kind of illicit organization or traffic or market is going to bring other things like it under the secrecy that they've built to protect their organization. So once you have drug trafficking, you have people trafficking, you have sex trafficking, you have child trafficking, you have all of these other things going on, and then you have all of the violence to protect those networks and that traffic and that income that come with it. So it really does act like a cancer in society when you have these sorts of things that aren't addressed, and when you just try and address it by caging and killing the people who are engaged in that, you're never going to get past it, because there's still the market that's there. And let's be honest with ourselves, street drugs are self-medication by people for whom the medical system has failed. People don't just go, well, it's a Tuesday, I guess I'm going to get hooked on Fent. They have a reason that they get hooked on that stuff, whether it's because they had a doctor who pushed oxy on them for years and years and years at doses that got them hooked on it, whether it's because they are homeless and that's the only moment of comfort that they get in their life, or they are mentally ill and this is the only thing that slows them down and gives them some peace. These drugs are not just used by people who want to party. They're used to have an effect on the life and the material conditions that people are living in, and we have to answer for that. We have to be real about that.
Thank you for that. And if you're curious about you seeing a lot of fruit emojis in the chat, it's just we just want to go ahead and keep the algorithm out of certain words that are not TikTok friendly. So that's why instead of me using the S word, I use like self unaliving. So and the KILL word, we try to say unalive. So yeah, just gotta be mindful of that. So that's
I've been through the ringer with the TikTok mods myself.
Okay. So that's what you see. If you're just wondering if they would just see you or just they weren't making fun of you, they were just trying to protect the lives. So that's what it was. So I appreciate your answer on that. So we're gonna go ahead and roll it over into talking about an infrastructure. Is that correct, Sianca? All right, you can go ahead and let's talk about that.
All righty. So this is one of my favorite ones. So Arizona's water supply and environmental sustainability are critical concerns as our population continues to grow. How would you balance the demands of development with protecting our land and water resources And what policies would you promote to ensure long-term environmental security for District 19?
Well, that I believe that we do need to have a codified Water Protection Act in order to, enshrine the rights of a person to access to water that's under their land. And so we need to then hold accountable those whose overuse of water negatively impacts that right. And that'll do a lot for the situation like in Wilcox, where there's a mega dairy that is using twice the amount of water of the entire city combined, and is basically 100% of the overdraft on that aquifer all by themselves. And people's wells are going dry, and there's subsidence in the land, causing all kinds of infrastructure damage, structural damage. It's opening up fissures in the land. So, we really need to, enshrine and enforce the quality of our vital resources, like, our clean air, clean land, clean water. But also we have to moderate our development with the land's load bearing capacity in mind. You Phoenix might have been a bad idea. I'm not gonna lie. Like, if you look at the amount of water draw that they have, and the strain that is putting on the Colorado River, and the fact that the population is exceeding the capacity of the water in a lot of ways, you really have to take that into account. And you have to be you have to triage what comes in and what doesn't based on the kind of resources and load bearing capacity of the land. We're in a desert. It's a very delicate environment, and people don't think of a desert as a delicate environment, but it's one that is so harsh, and that only certain kinds of things can grow there, and certain kinds of things can thrive there. And if you make it even harder for that, then you're going to end up with a wasteland. And if you don't take into consideration the long-term effects of these industrial operations, you're going to end up like West Texas, where they're about to lose their entire underground water supply to leaching in from industrial pumping. Fracking and oil drilling is now starting to invade into their drinking water, and it's going to make that place a wasteland. So we have to,
Wow.
yeah, it's bad, and we have to take into consideration that there's only so much resource here for us, and we can't just infinitely grow. It's a finite planet. It's a finite land, and we have to be real about that.
Absolutely. I have to read up on that as well. It's a whole lot of craziness going on, but thank you for bringing that up to a point for me to research in that too. Another question is, infrastructure in many Arizona communities is aging, like roads, bridges, and public utilities often need serious upgrades. How do you plan to advocate for smarter infrastructure investments that not only create jobs, but also make our communities more resilient to drought, heat, and other environmental challenges?
I think that a lot of those infrastructure problems really came from the kind of post-war ideology of how to build new cities, and a lot of the cities out here actually were built post-war, and so they thought, well, everybody's going to have a car or two, and so everything should be built around, highways to roads to streets to cul-de-sacs in a way that everything is very, very spread out. There's a ton of asphalt that needs maintaining. There's a ton of parking infrastructure that needs to be built. And there's all this distance and all of this fossil fuel burning that has to happen in order for you to, do your grocery shopping, to go to work, all of this other stuff. It requires a car. And so we really need to look at how we build our infrastructure of the future, and the density in which we build in order to cut down on the need for a 1,400-pound death machine to be screaming down the road for every teenager that needs to get to McDonald's. And so we need to again consider if our lifestyle is sustainable. in the environment that we're in. And in a lot of ways it isn't, and it's showing in these smaller towns that were built in the post-war. They had grants that built their additional infrastructure, and those grants are not there anymore. And now the life cycle of that infrastructure is running out, and it's bankrupting these small towns and these suburbs. And we need to build main streets again. We need to build mixed use rural, not rural, commercial and residential areas where people, can walk to where they need to go and get what they need to get, and don't have to then, clog up the roads and streets with vehicles and all that stuff, and offset all of that cost and all of that environmental damage and all of that fossil fuel usage and all of the rare earth mineral usage that comes with this this necessity for everyone to have cars. And in the transition for that, I think that we really need to work on improving public transportation in many ways, and as we build out those new areas of mixed use zoning. And I think that we have a giant fusion reactor in the sky, and 360 days of clear skies, and Arizona should very much be focused on expanding solar and wind, because we have a lot of high winds out here. We should very much be expanding those as a primary economic driver for the state, as we have a lot of land that's not, you can't farm it, you can't do a lot of other things with it, but you can use solar arrays, you can use it for wind turbines, and you can generate a lot of electricity that will be always needed. Electricity is always going to be in demand, especially as we become a more technologically reliant society. We need to focus very heavily on that. And we've also already got a lot of the copper that you would need it for that right in the ground here. So making these smart decisions about the resources that we have between the copper and the days of intense sunlight and the high winds, we can really do a lot for our electrical infrastructure that way. And then by building more densely and diverting the necessity for personal automobiles, I think we can do a whole lot to lower costs of living and lower impacts on our society, on our environment, and wear and tear and maintenance of our infrastructure.
That's awesome. Yes, thank you for that answer. We're going to ask one person from the audience to ask Mr. Ryan a question, or you can come into the queue. Don't be shy. He will not bite. Okay, we're still here, so so you can come up and ask your question. If not, I'm going to turn it over to Jazz B, where she will speak about local and constituent focus. Jazz. Oh, Jazz is frozen?
Looks frozen, yeah.
She's frozen. Oh, she had to drop down for a bit. Okay, let me see if she's gonna try to request back up. But if not, I'll help her out. So voters in District 19 often express frustration at their local concerns like road maintenance, housing costs, and access to health care don't get enough attention at the state level. But how will you ensure that the voices of everyday residents, not just lobbyists or party leaders, are heard and represented in your decision making?
So I'm gonna be in the community. I'm gonna be doing the work. I'm going to be showing up. I'm going to be reaching out. I'm going to be looking for information from the people where who I represent, and I'm going to make myself very accessible to people in order to ask questions and present problems that they need my assistance in solving. And ultimately it comes from Arizona having been a very conservative aligned state, very much in the whole Reaganite trickle down neoliberal economics, And that has utterly gutted civil society by taking everything we need and making it a commodity for rich people to play casino with. So by getting a lot of those, you know, more profit driven enterprises out, or making alternatives that are state funded for them, or public or are nonprofit alternatives for them, we can address some of those issues. But really, it goes back to a cultural thing of, look, y'all, we've had Republicans running the state house for 60 years. What has it gotten us? Why are we still beholden to their ideas and ideals when they're not working? And you can make all the excuses you want, but the responsibility lies with power. And the Republicans have had the power, they've had the responsibility, and they've decided to change nothing, and we're still getting what we get. So this is intentional. This is what they want. They want a state where your life is a poker chip, and they spend it as they want. And we're not doing that no more. We're done with that.
I've never heard that saying. I'm gonna steal that. They think our lives are a poker chip because they actually gamble. They're gambling with our lives. I like that. I'm gonna use that if you don't mind me stealing that from me. So the next question is, every community has its own unique challenges, from small business struggles to neighborhood safety and local development. What is your plan to stay directly connected with constituents, gather their input regularly, and make sure their needs shape your priorities in the Arizona Senate?
Well, it's a matter of making yourself available, and I am going to make efforts to do just that. My opponent barely ever makes public appearances. When she does, it's when she's surrounded by other Republicans, or when she's in a Republicans only event. So that's not how I'm going to be as a senator. I'm going to be where the people are. I'm going to seek out town halls. I'm going to have them regularly, where people can bring up their issues and talk to me directly. And I'm going to make other technical means of access to me very very readily available, in order to make sure that people feel heard, people feel like they're part of the conversation, and that people feel represented. And I don't care if you're a conservative. I don't care if you're a Christian. I don't care what your background or your politics is. If I am there to represent you, I am going to hear you, and you're going to be part of the conversation. Everybody needs to have that from their representatives. That's why the representative.
Absolutely. And I'm glad you brought up that point where you allowing people to be heard. And that's what's lacking. A lot of people is not being heard. And by you representing people, not just one specific party, you're representing people. And that's really, really important. And that's what people want. People want to be heard. People want to be listened to and acknowledged. And I really appreciate that. I know Jazzby's having, TikTok is just glitching, is acting up. But we're going to have an audience Q&A. If you have a question about the local and constituent focus. But before we do that, we have another rapid fire question, but this one is fun. It's not going to be harsh like the political one was. All right. So what's your go-to comfort food after a long day on the campaign trail?
Oh, that's gonna really depend on where I am and what's available. Every place I travel to, I try and find somewhere I've never been before, somewhere that's local. So I love finding the little hole in the wall taco shops, the little Mediterranean restaurants, the tiny Korean places. I just love finding these hidden gems anywhere I go. I was up in Green Valley a couple weeks ago, and after the event, I was like, I wonder if they've got a kebab place, and they did. And it was this old, it had been a pizzeria before, and it was open air, and they were using the pizza oven as to cook the kebab, and it was
What?
the best hummus I've had in my life. Absolutely, like they made it themselves every day, and it was just like this is such a just absolute jewel here in this kind of nowhere suburb in Arizona, and I'm like, yeah.
That's what's up. Jazzy, you want to continue with the rapid fire question?
Yeah, sorry about that. I
Okay.
did have some
I'm
slight
glad you.
technical
I'm like, don't
difficulties, so
leave me
please forgive me.
alone.
No, I wouldn't at all. So the next question we have for you is, when it comes to food, which one would you choose? Sonoran hot dogs or carne asada fries?
Ooh, that's ¿por qué no los dos? Um, the real trick is when you add the carne asada to the Sonoran hot dog. That's where it's at.
Wait,
Really?
can you tell me what type of hot dog that is? I never heard of it.
So a Sonoran dog is basically it's a sweet bun or a sweeter kind of bun, and it's gonna have I want to say onions. The dog is wrapped in bacon, and there's
Oh,
onions, mustard, and beans on top. And
what
it's
kind of
uh
beans?
it's very savory, very umami. It's very good. But then there's a couple of places out here who have taken that and like we can make it better and have added things like carne asada and bacon crumbles and pico de gallo and stuff like that. And it's
What,
yeah,
what kind of beans?
Yeah, what kind of beans? I was
pinto
curious.
beans.
Oh, pinto. Okay. Okay, that's interesting. Okay, so what's your favorite place? I'm sorry. What is your favorite piece of tech you would absolutely couldn't live without? You have any
Uh,
gadgets you can't live without?
I mean, that's pretty much any of them. I'm a programmer as for a living, but my phone is my an extension of my brain these days, and so being without that leaves me feeling rather unclothed. Just between all the different applications that I use, all the different things that allow me to monitor the situations with my shop and with my job, with my business, and all these other things, like having that availability mobile in my pocket anytime. It's a cell phone.
All right, thank you for that. And so the next question I have for you is: are you an easier riser or a late night problem solver? Solver.
A little bit of both. My circadian rhythm is about as dances about as well as I do. It's depends on what's going on. If I need to get something done early, I'm up early. If I need to burn the midnight oil to get it done, I do that and I get it done. And I find the time for rest whenever I can. But otherwise, if it needs doing, it needs doing.
Okay, and so tell me what one thing you could fix about the Arizona summers. What would it be?
Wheel. there there's a lot good about the summer. There's a lot of when you have my complexion and you really shouldn't be at this latitude. You go through a lot of sunscreen, and so maybe figure out a sunscreen that goes on a little easier.
And so, from what I understand, Arizona is more like dry heat, so it's more intense as
Oh
opposed
yeah,
to in the northeast and southern regions. It's more humidity. So
right.
I can imagine how the heat is in drier climates like
Well, it's
Arizona.
actually
It can be
so.
intense, right?
So I was raised in Louisiana. If you didn't pick that up from my accent here, but so because like in Louisiana, there's that 99% humidity at all times. If it's 100 degrees out, it's 100 degrees everywhere. If
Mm.
you're in the shade, it's 100 degrees. But in Arizona, it's 100 degrees out, but it's 90 in the shade. So I find that to be a significant difference, and one that I certainly appreciate, being that I stay in the shade.
Okay. And the last question I have for you is: if you weren't running for office, what's totally different career would you try if it wasn't? running for office right now?
Well, I mean, I'm already juggling a few careers. So between being a programmer and being a community activist and running a tabletop game shop, I've my roster is still full.
Oh, you said tabletop. So tabletop like ping pong, tennis. Okay.
No, more like Dungeons and Dragons, Magic the Gathering, just uh, board games, card games,
Okay.
comic books, that kind of stuff.
Dragons, really?
Yep.
Oh my God. That's what's up.
That's cool. Okay. All right. So we're going to open it up for anybody who would like to come up and ask Mr. Slawson a question. This could tackle any topic we talked about, or if we haven't touched on it, feel free to come up and ask up. In the meantime, Mr. Slawson, I do have another question for you. Since you started your campaign, how was it when you first approached your family about running for office? What was that conversation like?
Well, I don't have a huge extended family out here. I have friends and roommates, but my the rest of my family is kind of spread out between Texas and Louisiana, and so it was kind of easy on that kind of front because well, Ryan, do you want to run for office? Do you mind? Okay, Ryan, let's do it. So there's not a lot of people to consult.
Okay. All right. Just gonna go ahead and see if anyone else would like to ask you a question regarding your campaign. So in the meantime, I'll ask another one just to give someone else an opportunity. As we already know, we discussed about the environmental portion of Arizona. Have your particular district, have they dealt with a lot of droughts?
Oh
Um,
yeah,
and
yeah.
how does that go when it comes? How does that correlate with like the utility bill for a water bill when there's a drought? Does that have a significant effect?
Well, we're kind of in the middle of a 20-year mega drought. So the biggest people who are impacted though are going to be those who are on wells off of the main water infrastructure. Um, and as the aquifers get overtaxed and overdrafted, they start to lose their wells, they start to go dry, and the cost to them to dig their well deeper is astronomical. People with 400-foot wells are being told, yeah, you're gonna have to go down to 1,400 feet. And I don't know if you know much about the soil out here in Arizona, but we have this stuff called caliche, and it's basically a natural concrete. And so digging through that down to 1,400 feet is something that would run somebody about $400,000. And so,
Mm.
like the issues of these overdraft of this aquifer overdraft is significant all over the state, especially in the rural areas. And then finding surface water, finding alternate water sources out here has also been very difficult. The San Pedro runs up from Mexico, and it is overtaxed south of the border. They're using it heavily, so that's actually what serves most of the area that I'm from. So basically, we're now kind of using a lot of aquifers that are uh, recharged by runoff from rain in the mountains, and we haven't been getting the monsoon seasons like we have in the past, and so that is causing wells in this area to also go dry. There was a monitoring well that was dug just to keep an eye on the aquifer, and those have gone dry now in the county that I'm in, and so it's very severe, and it's something that is going to have to be solved sooner than later. Even if it's a 10-year solution, well, the time's going to pass anyway, and if you don't do anything now, you're not going to get there, and you're going to have a ghost town. And so we really have to start taking water very, very seriously out here. And scientists and ecologists have been telling us for decades that the dearth of fresh water is going to start being a big issue, and we're starting to see it.
Thank you for that. Okay, so someone in the chat asked, what is the state Senate's role in addressing the lack of affordable housing in your district?
Well, there's certain different things that the state can do. So they can make subsidies in certain cases, and that's basically what you see a lot of them doing. But those subsidies are basically just going straight into the pockets of these big corporate developers who are also buying up. Well, and then there's the uh, the Black Rocks and whatnots of the world are then buying up all of the family housing and stuff like that. And we really need to look into how we could implement socialized housing in some cases. Rent controls right now. However, in Arizona, there's a law forbidding rent control, and it's actually considered a violation of eminent domain's taking clause to necessarily have a public option for some of these vital goods, these vital public goods that we need to address those laws that were written to protect wealth and protect power against the needs of the people, and we really need to take those things into consideration and change them to where the state is an arbiter for the good of the people and for the well-being of the people of Arizona, instead of serving as a means of assisting the corporations in farming us like cattle.
Okay, thank you for that. All right, so it looks like there's no more questions that we have in the chat and for us, so I'll go ahead and let Sianca close it out for us.
All righty, Mr. Slawson, thank you so much for joining us tonight. It's been a pleasure. What's your message to voters as we head toward the primary election day, and how can people support you in this campaign?
My biggest thing is to tell people that politics doesn't begin at the polls. Politics begins every day when you wake up in the morning and you ask yourself, how can I advance my community? How can I live more in community? How can I change the material conditions that the people around me live under? And who can I contact and work with and be in community with in order to make that happen? If we only wait until we see the parties give us the choices that they like, and then go pick from those choices, and aren't involved, aren't being a part of who gets on that ballot and what gets on that ballot in the first place, then we're always going to be many steps behind the ultra wealthy and the powerful, who are enjoying the fruits of our life without us. So that's the big thing that I want to tell people is get involved, go be a part of your party, attend the meetings, get involved in community mutual aid and anything that builds community, because that's the whole point. The whole point is to build stronger communities, and we've had a lot of that taken away from us, and we've had it made incredibly hard for us, and we've got a long battle ahead of us to get that back.
Absolutely. And how can people support you in this campaign? Like, do you have social media? You have other platforms you use to stay involved, to be in contact with you?
Well, I am here on TikTok, Ryan Slawson for AZ Senate. I've also got my webpage, which has kind of all the information on it, and that is Slawson for azdistrict19.org. That's also in my bio, and on there will be proposed legislation. There will be links to where people can donate, and links to where people can join my Discord, where we coordinate community mutual aid and political activism.
Oh, that's great. That's awesome. So please, audience, please get engaged if you live in Arizona. And if you don't live in Arizona, just you can do some research on who's running in your district, and you can do the same as well. Thank you, Mr. Slawson, once again for coming. And we also want to invite you to another town hall that's happening tomorrow. It's a double header. Our next town hall will be with Dr. Kenneth Morgan Aguilera, who is running for Texas, the 12th Congressional District, Friday at 7 p.m. Eastern, and Oliver Ma, who is running for Lieutenant Governor for California, starting at 9 p.m. Eastern. So thank you to Mr. Ryan, to Jazz B, most beautiful Jazz B, for moderating, and I thank you for inviting me as her co-moderator as well, and the participants in the live stream, especially OVC. Thank you so much for being a platform and allowing us to have this town hall with various candidates. Thank you so much. Once again, Our Vote Counts, also known as OVC, a nonpartisan movement uniting Americans from all walks of life to empower voters, support candidates of integrity, and ensure every voice is heard through education, outreach, accountability, and action. We're building a strong democracy, one informed vote at a time. So join us, and remember, your vote is your power. Thank you so much, guys, and you all have a wonderful good night. Take
Have a
care.
good night.
Thanks for having me.
Alrighty.